Imagine, if you will, that the most powerful force within you isn't your intellect, your willpower, or even your emotions. It's something far more primal, a force lying dormant within the deepest recesses of your being, your sexual energy, but not the way the modern world views it. It's not merely about physical attraction, desire, or fleeting pleasure. No, Carl Jung saw sexual energy as something far deeper, far more mysterious, and infinitely more transformative than society dares to admit. This energy, Jung believed, holds the key to unlocking potential far beyond the conventional understanding of what it means to be human. Think about it. What if this immense energy inside you wasn't meant to be suppressed or indulged without awareness? What if it was meant to be understood, refined, and ultimately transformed into creativity, wisdom, and even spiritual realization? In this sense, it's not just about libido, it's about liberation. Jung saw sexual energy not as a mere biological drive, but as a symbolic representation of something far greater, the raw, untamed power of the psyche itself. But why is this such a revelation? What truth could Jung have uncovered about this force that could shift the way you view your life, your desires, and even your very purpose? Stick with me, and by the end of this journey, you'll begin to understand how this force, when fully embraced, can change everything. Let's go back to the roots of this energy. Carl Jung, unlike Sigmund Freud, wasn't solely fascinated by the sexual instincts. While Freud viewed sexuality as the primary driver of human behavior, Jung saw something more complex, more layered, and more spiritual. He didn't see sexual energy merely as a force of desire. To Jung, what ancient traditions called libido was more than just a sexual urge. It was the very energy that fuels life itself. It's the spark behind every creation, every pursuit, and every yearning. For Jung, libido wasn't about satisfying bodily needs. It was about channeling that energy into every aspect of human life, transforming it into something far more profound than mere pleasure. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. Jung believed that this energy had the potential to evolve. At its lowest expression, it manifests as compulsive desire, obsession, or even addiction. This raw energy, when left unchecked, can consume a person, leading them to destructive behaviors and unfulfilled desires. But at its highest, this energy transforms into something extraordinary. It becomes the fire that fuels art, meaning, love, transcendence, and even the process Jung called individuation, the psychological journey toward becoming our truest, most authentic selves. So, I ask you, how do you relate to your own sexual energy? Are you ashamed of it, controlled by it, fearful of its intensity? Or, have you ever considered that this energy within you could be a sacred force, one capable of unlocking your true potential? Jung urged us to stop repressing this energy. Instead, he called on us to integrate it, to bring it into consciousness. He talked about the shadow, that dark side of the psyche, where many of our denied sexual impulses reside. These impulses don't vanish when we suppress them. They are buried, yet they grow stronger, more potent, and in that burial, they begin to control us, surfacing in the form of anxiety, dysfunction, or destructive behavior. That's the real danger, not the energy itself, but our refusal to confront it with honesty. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But to do that, you must walk through the fires of your deepest impulses, not around them." He believed that, in order to become whole, we must face our desires head-on, not as something shameful, but as a language our souls are trying to speak. And what does that language say? It says, "I want to create, I want to connect, I want to become." Sexual energy is not just about reproduction. It is about expression, whether you're painting, composing music, building a business, or writing poetry. That surge of drive and inspiration you feel, it's rooted in the same wellspring as sexual desire. In ancient tantric traditions, this idea was deeply understood. The kundalini, the coiled serpent energy at the base of the spine, was seen as the source of life force. When awakened and cultivated, it rises upward, enlightening the mind and uniting body and spirit. Jung saw parallels in this concept and related it to his own idea of individuation, the path of becoming whole, of integrating all aspects of the self, both light and dark. It's the journey towards embracing every part of our being, including the suppressed, the denied, and yes, the sexual energy that often remains unexplored. So, here's the question: what are you doing with your energy? Is it leaking out in unconscious habits, distractions, and addictions? Or Are you learning to harness it, to channel it into creativity and growth? Because this energy, if left unmastered, can consume you. But if it is understood and transformed, it can elevate you to unimaginable heights. This is just the beginning. As we continue, we'll dive deeper into how this energy, when integrated, is the key to becoming the truest version of ourselves, the full, unshackled version of who we are meant to be. Carl Jung's understanding of sexual energy was revolutionary. Unlike Sigmund Freud, who focused on the instinctual and often repressed nature of sexuality, Jung took a broader, more holistic approach. He believed that sexual energy was not simply a physical urge, but a deeper, symbolic force connected to the very essence of human existence. Jung viewed sexual energy as a metaphor for life energy, a universal force that powers everything we create, pursue, or desire. This energy was not confined to the body's needs or pleasures, but extended to the psyche, driving not just the need for reproduction, but the creation of meaning, purpose, and beauty. In Jung's view, sexual energy had the potential to evolve and ascend from its most basic form into something much more elevated. At its most primal expression, this energy manifests as compulsive desires, obsessions, or addictions. It becomes a force that consumes, leaving us trapped in unhealthy patterns and destructive behaviors. However, when understood and refined, this same energy transforms. It becomes the fire that fuels art, love, spiritual transcendence, and even the path of individuation, the journey to becoming our truest, most authentic selves. This transformative power of sexual energy is not just a theoretical concept, it is a lived experience. Jung believed that when we begin to recognize and understand our sexual energy, we start to unlock untapped potential, creativity, and insight. But this process requires deep self-awareness. You must confront your impulses, not as something shameful or undesirable, but as a natural force within you that is worthy of integration. Jung understood that many of us are disconnected from our sexual energy, either repressing it out of shame or indulging in it without awareness. He warned against both extremes. Repression does not make the energy disappear. On the contrary, it buries it deeper into the unconscious mind, where it gains power and begins to shape our lives from the shadows. On the other hand, indulging in unchecked sexual energy, without reflection or consciousness, leads to chaos and imbalance. The real danger, according to Jung, was not the energy itself, but our refusal to face it honestly. He suggested that we must stop hiding from our deepest impulses and start exploring them consciously. It is only by integrating this energy into our lives that we can harness its full transformative potential. Jung once famously said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." To do this, he believed we must be willing to confront our darkest, most hidden impulses and understand them not as sources of shame, but as messages from our deeper self. Consider this. Sexual energy is not merely about physical desire. It is about expression of the deepest aspects of ourselves, whether it is in the form of creativity, passion, or the pursuit of meaning. As Jung noted, whether you are painting a canvas, composing music, building a business, or writing poetry, the surge of inspiration behind those actions stems from the same source as sexual energy. In ancient tantric traditions, there was a deep understanding of this principle. The Kundalini, described as a coiled serpent at the base of the spine, was thought to be the source of life force. When awakened and cultivated, it rises, illuminating the mind and uniting body and spirit. Jung saw this idea as parallel to his own concept of individuation, the psychological journey toward wholeness, where the individual integrates both the light and dark aspects of their personality, including their sexual energy. Jung understood that sexual energy, when consciously cultivated and transformed, could lead to profound spiritual awakening. The integration of this energy was not just about transcending the instinctual urges, but about channeling them into creative and spiritual growth. As we will see, this process is not easy. It requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to face parts of ourselves that we would rather ignore. But the rewards of such integration are extraordinary. As we continue on this journey, keep this in mind. Sexual energy is not something to be feared or repressed. It is a source of power that, when understood, can drive us toward creativity, connection, and spiritual transformation. It is not merely about desire or pleasure. It is about liberation. The power of sexual energy, once unlocked and properly integrated, can lead to the realization of the fullest, most authentic version of ourselves. One of the most profound concepts Carl Jung introduced to the world was the idea of the shadow, the unconscious part of our psyche that contains repressed thoughts, emotions, and desires. This aspect of the self is often the repository for things we wish to avoid or are ashamed of. But Jung taught us that these repressed elements do not vanish into thin air when ignored. Instead, they grow in strength, becoming a powerful influence in our lives, often without our awareness. In the context of sexual energy, the shadow is particularly significant. Many of us are taught from a young age that sexual desires are to be hidden, suppressed, or controlled. Society, religion, and family often place shame on our natural urges, labeling them as inappropriate or sinful. As a result, much of our sexual energy gets pushed into the shadow, where it lies dormant, growing and building strength. Jung believed that these repressed impulses don't disappear. They remain active, controlling us from the dark corners of our unconscious mind. As a result, they can manifest in our daily lives in ways that are destructive and destabilizing through anxiety, dysfunction, or harmful behaviors. The more we refuse to face these hidden parts of ourselves, the more power they gain over us. But the true danger isn't the energy itself, it is our refusal to confront it with honesty and awareness. Jung argued that by denying the shadow, we essentially give it the power to shape our lives in ways we cannot control. It leads to unconscious actions and reactions that prevent us from living authentically and fully. Our unacknowledged desires, fantasies, and urges bubble to the surface in unexpected and often troubling ways, leading to feelings of confusion, guilt, and inner turmoil. However, Jung didn't believe that the shadow was something to be feared. Rather, it was something to be integrated. He argued that by confronting the shadow, we can begin the process of self-acceptance and healing. This involves acknowledging the desires and impulses we've been taught to suppress, and instead seeing them as part of the larger, more complex picture of who we are. The shadow, Jung argued, contains not only our repressed desires, but also our deepest potential for growth. When we learn to embrace and integrate these hidden aspects of ourselves, we become more whole, more authentic, and more in tune with our true nature. The key to this integration is not repression or indulgence, but awareness and conscious acceptance. Think about this. What happens when we refuse to face our sexual energy? When we push it away or pretend it doesn't exist, we miss the opportunity to explore its deeper, more transformative aspects. The repression of sexual energy often leads to anxiety, neuroses, or compulsive behaviors. For instance, someone who denies their sexual desires may find themselves in destructive relationships, experiencing unfulfilling and chaotic sexual encounters, or feeling disconnected from their true self. The energy, once buried, finds unhealthy outlets. But what if we could stop running from these parts of ourselves? What if we could stop hiding, sit with our desires, and observe them without judgment? What would it look like if we started to embrace our sexuality as a source of creative and spiritual power? Jung's work was about helping us confront the shadow with courage, awareness, and openness. By doing so, we don't just free ourselves from the chains of shame, we open ourselves to the power that lies within us. The shadow may feel uncomfortable at first, but it is also the key to profound transformation. So, the next time you feel the stirrings of desire, instead of running from it or hiding it away, ask yourself, what is this energy trying to teach me? What part of myself have I been denying? How can I use this energy to fuel creativity, love, and growth? The journey of self-awareness is not easy, but it is sacred. It is only through embracing our shadow, our denied desires and impulses, that we can begin the process of individuation, of becoming whole. It's through this confrontation that we can unlock the full potential of our sexual energy, using it not as a force that controls us, but as a force that empowers us. Jung's perspective on sexual energy went beyond the physical realm of desire and attraction. He saw sexual energy as a fundamental part of human expression. It's not just about reproduction or sexual pleasure. Sexual energy is about creation, connection, and transcendence. This energy is the driving force behind many of the deepest, most meaningful expressions of human life, from artistic endeavors to personal growth and spiritual development. In essence, sexual energy is life energy. Jung believed that it is the same force that powers every aspect of our existence. Whether you're painting a masterpiece, composing a piece of music, or working tirelessly on a business idea, The surge of creativity and passion you experience stems from the same wellspring of energy as sexual desire. This idea connects directly to the ancient concept of Kundalini, the coiled serpent energy at the base of the spine, believed to be the source of life force in Hindu and Tantric traditions. When awakened, this energy rises, uniting mind, body, and spirit, and leading to higher states of consciousness. Jung found parallels between this ancient concept and his own ideas about individuation, the process of becoming whole. Just as the Kundalini rises through the chakras, sexual energy, when properly harnessed and directed, can elevate a person's consciousness, opening up pathways to creativity, wisdom, and spiritual realization. In this sense, sexual energy is not just a biological force, it is a spiritual one. It carries with it the potential for deep, meaningful transformation. This shift in understanding is crucial. The modern world often views sexual energy as something to be suppressed, controlled, or indulged in without awareness. The result: we either repress it out of shame, or we fall into the trap of mindless indulgence. In both cases, we lose touch with the deeper, more sacred power that sexual energy holds. Jung, however, urged us to embrace this energy, not to let it control us, but to learn how to direct and refine it. When sexual energy is consciously integrated into our lives, it becomes a powerful tool for creation. It can be channeled into artistic endeavors, intellectual pursuits, or acts of love and service. It becomes the fire behind what we create and how we connect with others. Consider the lives of great artists, thinkers, and creators throughout history. Many of them struggled with intense, sometimes overwhelming sexual desire. Yet, those who were able to channel this energy creatively produced works that continue to inspire us today. Whether through painting, sculpture, music, or writing, they transformed their raw, instinctual energy into something elevated and meaningful. They turned sexual energy into art, devotion, and creation. Jung saw this process as a form of psychological alchemy, taking base material from the unconscious mind and transforming it into gold. He believed that sexual energy, in its most raw and untamed form, is the most potent material of all. But it requires conscious effort to refine and elevate this energy. When we do so, we unlock new dimensions of creativity, insight, and spiritual fulfillment. The question is, what are you doing with your sexual energy? Are you letting it leak out in unconscious habits and distractions? Or are you learning how to channel it? Are you using this energy to create, to build, to express, and to connect? Because if not mastered, sexual energy can consume you. But if understood and harnessed, it can elevate you, allowing you to reach your fullest potential. By integrating sexual energy into your life consciously, you begin to tap into the very essence of what it means to be human, creative, connected, and transformative. The process of individuation requires that we do just this. Take that raw energy and channel it into a purposeful, meaningful life. It's not an easy path, but it is a powerful one. Through this work, you not only begin to understand the energy within you, but also begin to master it, transforming yourself in the process. When you begin to understand and harness your sexual energy in this way, you align yourself with the deeper, transformative forces within you. You stop seeing it as something outside of you that needs to be controlled or suppressed. Instead, you recognize it as part of the divine force that drives everything: creativity, expression, connection, and transformation. And once you begin to recognize and integrate this power, you become more whole, more alive, and more authentically yourself. Carl Jung's concept of the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine archetypes within each of us, adds a layer of complexity to the relationship we have with our sexual energy. These inner archetypes are not simply about gender, but represent the unconscious aspects of our psyche: the receptive and active, the intuitive and rational, the nurturing and driven. They reflect the duality within us all, and understanding them can reveal the deeper, often hidden, parts of ourselves that shape our desires, actions, and relationships. Jung believed that our sexual attractions, our longings, and even our romantic obsessions are often projections of these internal archetypes. This means that when we find ourselves intensely drawn to someone, it is not just the individual we are attracted to, but rather the qualities they embody that resonate with our own unconscious desires for integration. In this way, we are often chasing not the other person, but a part of ourselves that we have disowned or neglected. For example, consider the partner you are most drawn to. Perhaps you are captivated by someone who embodies strength, confidence, and independence. What Jung would suggest is that this attraction might reflect a part of yourself that you have yet to fully embody, your own dormant courage or assertiveness. Similarly, if you are drawn to someone with a mysterious, emotional quality, it may be because they mirror a sensitivity or depth within you that has been suppressed or ignored. This is not to say that attraction is an illusion, or that the person we are drawn to is somehow not real. Instead, Jung proposed that attraction is a mirror. It reflects parts of ourselves that are longing to be integrated. Understanding this mirror is a critical step in the process of individuation, as it helps us reclaim those lost or hidden aspects of ourselves, ultimately leading to greater self-awareness and personal growth. Jung was not against sex. He was against being unconscious about it. He warned that when sexual energy is left unexamined, it becomes chaotic, leading to projections and unhealthy patterns in our relationships. As an example, we might find ourselves in a cycle of attracting the same type of partner over and over again, only to feel unfulfilled or even disillusioned when the relationship does not meet our expectations. The problem lies not in the partner, but in the projection of our own unacknowledged inner desires and needs onto them. This cycle, though painful, is not a failure. It is an opportunity for growth. Jung saw projection as a necessary part of the individuation process. It is a signal from the unconscious, calling us to reclaim what we have rejected or failed to acknowledge within ourselves. When we recognize the projection, we stop seeing the other person as the object of our desire and start to see them as a reflection of our own psyche. This insight, though difficult, is liberating because it shifts our understanding of attraction. It's no longer about seeking someone to fulfill a void, but about using attraction as a gateway to self-integration and wholeness. Once we stop projecting onto others, relationships can evolve. Instead of being about filling a perceived gap within ourselves, they can become spaces for growth, transformation, and shared purpose. This shift changes the dynamic of intimacy, moving away from a transactional need and towards a deeper, more spiritual connection. However, Jung's warning remains. As long as our sexual energy remains unconscious, it will continue to rule us, pulling us into cycles of sabotage and disappointment. This unconscious energy can disguise itself as idealization of a partner, leading us to create fantasies around them that are ultimately unfulfilled. The key, then, is to bring this energy into the light of consciousness, to stop projecting our inner desires and needs onto others, and to begin seeing them as opportunities for integration rather than external solutions to our internal conflicts. The path to true intimacy begins when we stop seeking to complete ourselves through others and start seeking to complete ourselves within. When we do this, our relationships become more meaningful, less dependent on the other person for validation, and more focused on mutual growth and transformation. This is the essence of Jung's vision of love and connection. It is not about filling a void, but about experiencing a deeper, more authentic union of selves. So, ask yourself, who are you drawn to? And what does that attraction say about the parts of yourself you are longing to reclaim? Perhaps the partner you idealize represents your own power, vulnerability, or sensitivity. By recognizing this, you take a significant step toward understanding your unconscious desires and embracing the deeper layers of your sexual energy. In the next part, we will explore the dangers of unconscious sexual energy and the path to understanding this potent force. Jung believed that when we bring awareness to these aspects of our psyche, we free ourselves from the grip of projection and begin to move toward a more integrated, conscious way of being. Jung's insights into sexual energy are both profound and, at times, unsettling. While he saw immense potential in this force, he also recognized the dangers of allowing it to remain unchecked or unexamined. When sexual energy is left to operate unconsciously, it becomes chaotic, uncontrollably, and can manifest in destructive ways. It can pull us into patterns of addiction, obsession, and emotional dysfunction. Without awareness, this powerful energy is like a wild, untamed beast that consumes us rather than elevating us. Jung warned that one of the greatest dangers of sexual energy is the way it can control us from the shadows of the unconscious. When we repress or avoid confronting our sexual impulses, they don't disappear. Instead, they become buried in the depths of the psyche, festering and growing stronger. Over time, this repressed energy begins to shape our thoughts, behaviors, and decisions without us even realizing it. It leads to anxiety, compulsive behaviors, and often manifests in toxic relationships, emotional numbness, or addictive patterns. Have you ever noticed how many of your most self-destructive behaviors stem not from rational decisions, but from unconscious urges? We chase relationships that sabotage us, indulge in habits that numb us, or make decisions in the heat of longing that we later regret. Jung believed that much of this happens because we have not learned to contain our sexual energy. Containment doesn't mean suppression, it means holding that energy, acknowledging it, and learning to redirect it in conscious, productive ways. The issue arises when we don't contain it at all. If we repress it, it grows in the dark and becomes an even more potent force. If we let it run wild without direction or awareness, it can destroy everything in its path. Jung likened this uncontrolled sexual energy to a wild animal. If you lock it in a cage, it will eventually go mad. If you let it run free, it may wreak havoc on your life. But if you meet it with understanding, awareness, and respect, it becomes your alien important companion on your journey toward self-realization and transformation. This is the real danger Jung spoke of, not the sexual energy itself, but our refusal to face it with honesty. The energy itself is neither good nor bad, it is simply a force. The problem lies in how we handle it. When we suppress it or indulge in it mindlessly, we allow it to control us. But when we bring it into consciousness, we gain the ability to direct it, to use it for creativity, growth, and spiritual awakening. In doing so, we free ourselves from its chaotic grip and begin to experience its true transformative power. Jung also observed how cultural repression, religious dogma, and moral rigidity contributed to this unconscious handling of sexual energy. He noted how societies that tried to suppress sexual desires and instincts only created more confusion and disintegration within the individual. These repressed desires didn't vanish. Instead, they turned into neuroses, self-destructive behaviors, and unhealthy relationships. By denying our natural sexual impulses, we allow them to control us from the shadows, guiding our lives in ways that often lead to dissatisfaction and confusion. But there is hope. Jung's work is ultimately about the reclamation of this energy. Once we bring this energy into the light, by acknowledging, understanding, and integrating it, we reclaim our power. It no longer has the ability to control us from the shadows. We stop reacting to unconscious urges, and instead begin to direct that energy where it matters most. The process is not easy. It requires facing the parts of ourselves that we have been taught to fear or reject. It requires self-awareness, honesty, and the courage to confront the darkness within. But the rewards are immense. By integrating our sexual energy, we begin to tap into a deeper, more authentic expression of ourselves. We move away from patterns of unconscious desire and begin to create consciously, shaping our lives with intention and purpose. So, ask yourself, where in your life is your sexual energy leaking out in unconscious habits or distractions? Are you allowing this energy to shape your decisions and relationships without awareness? How can you begin to bring this energy into consciousness, to use it as a tool for transformation rather than a force that controls you? The process of integrating sexual energy is sacred work. It requires us to stop running, to sit with our desires, and to watch them without judgment. It requires us to embrace the parts of ourselves that we have denied, and to channel that energy into creative, spiritual, and emotional expression. This is the journey of individuation, the path to becoming whole, to becoming truly ourselves. In the next section, we will explore sublimation, a powerful concept that Jung introduced to help us transform raw desire into higher forms of expression. We will dive into how we can consciously direct sexual energy to elevate our lives and reach our fullest potential. As we continue our journey into understanding sexual energy, we must confront one of the most important aspects of Jung's philosophy: integration. To integrate something means to accept and embrace it as part of the whole, rather than repressing or ignoring it. This process of integration is not only vital for understanding sexual energy, but for transforming it into a force that can fuel our creativity, spirituality, and personal growth. Jung believed that one of the keys to understanding sexual energy is learning not to repress it, but to face it with open eyes and open arms. Integration involves confronting the desires, impulses, and fantasies we might otherwise deny or hide from. It's about taking the energy that is often considered shameful or unacceptable and learning to channel it into constructive and elevated forms. This is where the concept of sublimation comes into play. Sublimation, according to Jung, is the process by which raw, primal sexual energy is transformed into something more refined, something higher. It's the act of taking that intense, often overwhelming desire and transmuting it into creative, spiritual, or intellectual expression. It's not about suppressing the energy, but redirecting it to manifest in a way that elevates both the individual and the collective. Imagine the power of sexual energy, not as a destructive force, but as a creative one, a driving force behind some of the greatest artistic, philosophical, and spiritual achievements in human history. Think of the most iconic artists, musicians, and leaders who channeled their intense inner energy into works of unparalleled brilliance, from Shakespeare to Picasso, from Beethoven to Gandhi. Many of the greatest minds and hearts in history have transmuted their sexual energy into forms of expression that have shaped our world. But how do we apply this to our own lives? It begins by acknowledging the raw energy within us and learning to guide it consciously. We must first stop running from our desires and sit with them. This might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if we have been conditioned to feel shame or fear toward these energies. But to truly understand sexual energy, we must allow it to speak to us. We must listen without judgment and ask, what is this energy trying to teach me? What part of myself is it calling me to reclaim? Once we sit with the energy, the next step is to channel it. This means finding outlets for expression, whether through art, movement, writing, or even our relationships. When we consciously channel our sexual energy into these creative or spiritual outlets, it ceases to be chaotic or destructive. Instead, it becomes a powerful tool for growth and transformation. Think of sexual energy as a river. If it is left unchecked, it can flood and overwhelm the landscape, destroying everything in its path. But when the river is guided into channels, it can irrigate fields, power mills, and nourish entire communities. Similarly, when we channel our sexual energy into purposeful activities, it can elevate us, not only helping us create external works of beauty, but also allowing us to create internal harmony and balance. Jung's idea of sublimation is about creating these channels, giving direction to the raw fire within us, so that it can fuel our greater purpose. This energy, when transformed, can lead to self-actualization, or, as Jung called it, individuation. It's the journey toward becoming whole, toward integrating all aspects of our being, including the sexual and instinctual ones, into a unified self. The process of integration requires patience, self-awareness, and a deep willingness to confront the parts of ourselves that we have neglected or rejected. It requires that we acknowledge the energy within us without guilt or shame, but with the curiosity of an explorer seeking to understand a force that could change their life. So, as you reflect on your own sexual energy, ask yourself, how am I channeling this energy? Is it leaking out in unconscious habits, distractions, or addictions? Or am I learning to guide it into something creative, meaningful, and life-affirming? How can I begin the process of sublimation and use this powerful force to fuel my creative, spiritual, and emotional growth? In the next section, we'll go even deeper into individuation, the process of becoming whole, and explore how sexual energy plays a crucial role in that journey. This path of self-discovery is not just about improving oneself. It is about becoming the fullest version of who we are, embracing both our light and dark aspects, and finding the unity that lies within us all. Individuation, a core concept in Jungian psychology, is the process of becoming one's true self, an authentic, integrated version of who we are meant to be. It is not simply about self-improvement or achieving external success. Rather, individuation is the slow, often painful journey toward becoming whole, embracing both the light and dark aspects of ourselves. This process is a deeply spiritual and psychological path that requires us to confront our deepest impulses, desires, and fears. At the heart of individuation lies the realization that we are not simply a set of social roles, expectations, or personas. Jung believed that within each of us lives a self, a totality that encompasses all aspects of our being, beyond the masks we wear in daily life. Yet, when we are born, we are fragmented. We develop a personality that is shaped by societal expectations, family dynamics, and external pressures. This is what Jung called the persona. The persona is the mask we wear to fit in, to succeed, and to be accepted by others. But what happens to the parts of ourselves that don't fit neatly into this mask? They get pushed into the shadow, that unconscious part of the psyche where we store repressed desires, fears, and emotions. And, notably, these repressed aspects of ourselves are not just weaknesses or flaws. They also include our passions, desires, sensuality, and creativity, those parts of us that don't conform to society's expectations of acceptable behavior. Sexual energy plays a key role in this process of individuation. In the traditional understanding, sexual energy is often seen as something instinctual, chaotic, or even shameful. However, Jung saw this energy as one of the most powerful forces we possess, capable of bringing us closer to wholeness if we are willing to face and integrate it. When we suppress our sexual energy, whether out of shame, guilt, or fear, it doesn't simply disappear. Instead, it waits, lurking in the unconscious, growing stronger. This unacknowledged energy often bursts forth in unexpected and sometimes destructive ways. It can manifest as compulsive behaviors, toxic relationships, addiction, or anxiety. These are all symptoms of sexual energy that has been denied, pushed aside, or ignored. But the real danger is not the energy itself, it's our refusal to face it. Sexual energy, when left unexamined, becomes like a wildfire. If we repress it, it will burn us from the inside out. If we let it run wild without direction, it will destroy everything in its path. But when we learn to confront and integrate it consciously, it becomes a powerful source of vitality, creativity, and personal growth. Individuation is about integrating all parts of ourselves, the parts we've hidden, rejected, or denied, and making them conscious. This includes acknowledging our sexual energy, our desires, and our deepest impulses. By doing so, we begin to reclaim those fragmented parts of ourselves and move toward a more complete, whole self. The energy that was once chaotic and destructive becomes a creative force that drives us toward our true purpose. Jung's view of individuation was not about becoming perfect. Rather, it was about embracing the contradictions within us, recognizing that we are not simply good or bad, masculine or feminine, light or dark. We are all of these things, and it is only by integrating these aspects of our being that we can become truly whole. The path of individuation is a journey that requires us to stop living from fragments. It requires us to confront and embrace the aspects of ourselves we have rejected, especially those parts connected to our sexual energy. It's a process of coming into full alignment with our true nature, of becoming who we were always meant to be. This process is not easy. It requires courage, honesty, and the willingness to face our deepest fears and desires. But the rewards of individuation are profound. By embracing our sexual energy, we stop living in fragmentation and begin to live from a place of wholeness. We begin to understand our true purpose, our deepest desires, and how they can guide us on the path to spiritual and personal fulfillment. As we continue on this journey, ask yourself, what parts of me have I been denying? Where am I still fragmented, holding on to personas or roles that no longer serve me? How can I begin to integrate the sexual energy within me, transforming it into a force for creativity, love, and spiritual growth? In the next section, we will dive deeper into the process of sublimation, which is the key to transforming raw sexual energy into higher forms of expression. This is the alchemical process of turning base desires into spiritual gold, and it holds the key to unlocking the transformative power of our sexual energy. One of the most profound paradoxes in Jung's psychology is the relationship between the persona and the shadow. The persona is the mask we wear to navigate the world, the version of ourselves that we present to others to fit in, to succeed, and to be accepted. It's the face we show at work, at home, and in public. While the persona is essential for social functioning, Jung believed that it can also become a prisoner mask that hides our truest self, limiting our potential for growth and self-expression. On the other hand, the shadow is the part of us that contains the aspects of ourselves that we reject, repress, or deny. It is the part of our psyche where we bury the qualities that don't fit neatly into the persona, our darker desires, fears, weaknesses, and unacknowledged impulses. But, as Jung argued, these shadow aspects do not simply vanish when we ignore them. Instead, they grow stronger, influencing our behavior from the depths of the unconscious mind. Sexual energy, when repressed, often finds its way into the shadow. Society teaches us that certain desires, particularly sexual ones, are inappropriate or shameful. As a result, we push them away, burying them deep within us. But in doing so, we give them power. Repressed sexual energy doesn't disappear. It becomes distorted, hidden from conscious awareness, and takes on a life of its own, emerging in unexpected and sometimes destructive ways. Jung's view is both liberating and unsettling. By confronting our shadow, by bringing these hidden aspects of ourselves into consciousness, we can begin to reclaim the parts of us that have been locked away. The energy we once feared or rejected can be transformed into a source of strength and creativity. But first, we must acknowledge it and stop running from it. This paradoxical relationship between the persona and the shadow is at the heart of the individuation process. To become whole, to truly understand ourselves, we must integrate the shadow. This means looking at the parts of ourselves we are ashamed of, the parts that society deems unacceptable, and asking, why have I pushed this away? What does this part of me have to teach me? It's important to understand that this integration is not about embracing every impulse unconditionally. It's not about giving in to every desire or surrendering to every urge. It's about bringing the shadow into the light, understanding it, and using it to inform our growth. By integrating these darker, repressed aspects of the self, we stop running from them, we stop being controlled by them, and we gain greater freedom to live authentically and consciously. Jung believed that the more we repress or deny our shadow, the more it controls us. It influences our relationships, our decisions, and our behavior in ways that we often don't recognize. This unconscious influence is what creates patterns of self-sabotage. Why we attract the same destructive relationships, make the same mistakes, and find ourselves in situations that don't align with our true desires. But when we start to confront the shadow, something amazing happens. We become more whole. We begin to recognize the parts of ourselves that we've been avoiding and embrace them as integral pieces of who we are. This process requires us to look at our sexual energy with curiosity, not fear. We must sit with our desires and impulses, observe them, and ask what they are trying to teach us. Jung's journey toward wholeness is not about eradicating the parts of ourselves we find uncomfortable. It's about integrating them. It's about recognizing that the shadow contains both our greatest fears and our greatest potential. Only by embracing both the light and dark sides of our psyche can we hope to become the full, authentic version of ourselves. As you reflect on your own persona and shadow, consider this. What parts of yourself have you been hiding from? What aspects of your sexual energy have you repressed, denied, or ignored? How can you begin to confront those parts and integrate them into your life? Because in the end, the shadow is not something to be afraid of. It is something to be understood, embraced, and transformed. In the next section, we'll explore sublimation in more depth. Sublimation is the process of taking raw, primal sexual energy and turning it into something higher, something more refined. It is the key to transforming desire into creativity, love, and spiritual enlightenment. It is the alchemy of the soul, and it holds the secret to turning our base instincts into gold. The concept of sublimation is where the magic truly begins. It is one of Jung's most profound ideas, offering a pathway for us to transform raw, primal sexual energy into something far greater, creative, spiritual, and purposeful. Sublimation is the psychological process of taking base instincts and desires and redirecting them into higher forms of expression. It's not about repressing sexual energy but transforming it, refining it, and using it to fuel our growth. Think of sexual energy as fire. Left unchecked, it can burn uncontrollably, wreaking havoc on everything in its path. But when guided and directed, it can light up the darkest spaces, provide warmth, and inspire creativity. Sublimation is the act of taking that raw, untamed fire and using it to illuminate the path forward, to fuel creativity, personal growth, and even spiritual enlightenment. Jung understood that one of the most powerful forces in the human psyche is sexual energy. But if left in its natural, unrefined state, it can often become compulsive, destructive, and uncontrollable. By sublimating this energy, we transform it into something more, refine something that can enrich our lives rather than control them. This idea of sublimation is especially relevant to the creative process. If we look at the lives of great artists, writers, musicians, and thinkers, we often find that their most inspired work came from an intense, almost overwhelming inner energy. Many of these great minds experienced strong sexual urges, desires, and passions, but rather than being consumed by them, they channeled this energy into their creative pursuits. For instance, the works of Shakespeare, Picasso, Beethoven, and even modern figures like Steve Jobs were deeply influenced by their ability to channel raw sexual energy into artistic and intellectual brilliance. It wasn't that they suppressed their desires or denied their sexual impulses. They learned to transform them, directing that energy toward their passions and creative expressions. Jung saw the process of sublimation as a form of psychological alchemy. Alchemy is the ancient practice of turning base metals into gold. Jung believed that the same could be done with the unconscious mind, taking base desires, like sexual energy, and refining them into something spiritually valuable. When we redirect sexual energy, we don't diminish its power. We elevate it to a higher level of consciousness. This transformation is not just about creativity in the traditional sense. It's about taking the intense, sometimes overwhelming energy we feel and giving it form and purpose. Whether it's in the form of art, music, business, or personal relationships, the energy that we have been taught to either repress or indulge in can be the very force that propels us toward our fullest potential. Sublimation is not an easy path. It requires discipline, awareness, and effort. It's about learning to guide this powerful force rather than letting it control us. It's about understanding that sexual energy is not an obstacle to be avoided, but a source of immense power that can drive us to do meaningful work in the world. But this requires us to do more than just understand our energy. It requires us to direct it consciously. We must be able to ask, how can I use this energy in a way that serves my greater purpose? How can I transform this raw desire into something beautiful, productive, and life? Jung believed that when we channel this energy into creative expression, we tap into a deeper sense of purpose. We become less reactive to our desires and more focused on how to use them to elevate our lives. We begin to see sexual energy not as something to be feared or denied, but as a sacred force that can guide us toward growth, fulfillment, and enlightenment. In the next section, we will return to the idea of the anima and animus, those inner archetypes that represent the feminine and masculine energies within us all. These energies are essential to understanding the role sexual energy plays in our lives. By recognizing and integrating these inner archetypes, we move closer to understanding the deeper dynamics of attraction, love, and spiritual union. Carl Jung's concept of the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine aspects within us, adds a profound layer to our understanding of sexual energy and its role in relationships. These archetypes are not about gender, but represent the fundamental energies that exist within every person, regardless of their outward gender expression. The anima represents the feminine, receptive, and intuitive aspects of the psyche, while the animus represents the masculine, active, and rational aspects. Together, they form a dynamic balance that plays a critical role in our inner and outer worlds. Jung argued that many of our sexual attractions and romantic longings are projections of these internal energies. We are often drawn to certain qualities in others that mirror the aspects of ourselves we have yet to embrace or integrate. In this way, our desires and sexual attractions are not always about the person we are drawn to, but rather about the archetypal qualities they represent within us. For example, a man who is deeply attracted to a woman who embodies strength and assertiveness might find himself drawn to these qualities, not because of the woman herself, but because these qualities are dormant within him, waiting to be acknowledged. Similarly, a woman who is attracted to a man who is emotionally distant and mysterious might be projecting her own unrecognized inner animus, a part of herself that is rational, detached, or assertive. These projections are often unconscious, and without awareness, they lead to cycles of attraction and disappointment. When we project our anima or animus onto another person, we are not truly seeing them for who they are. Instead, we are seeing a reflection of our inner selves, a part of us that we have disowned or failed to recognize. This is why many relationships are marked by intense longing, but once the initial attraction fades, we often feel unfulfilled. We may feel disappointed because we were never truly in love with the other person. But with the projection of the archetype within us, the key to understanding these projections is recognition. Jung believed that to move beyond unconscious projections, we must first recognize them. This involves stepping back and asking ourselves, who am I really attracted to, and why? What part of myself am I projecting onto this person? What does my attraction reveal about the aspects of myself I have yet to embrace? By answering these questions, we begin to break free from the cycle of unconscious desire and move toward a more conscious, integrated approach to relationships. Jung's concept of projection is crucial in understanding how sexual energy can influence our lives. He believed that when we project our inner anima or animus onto another person, we are not truly engaging with them, but with an idealized image of who we want them to be. This projection distorts reality and keeps us from experiencing authentic intimacy. Instead of seeing another person as they are, we see them as a mirror for the parts of ourselves that we have not fully integrated. The process of integration involves bringing these unconscious projections into the light and recognizing them for what they are, reflections of our own inner selves. By doing so, we stop relying on others to fulfill our inner needs. We no longer look outside ourselves for validation or completion, but instead turn inward, embracing both our anima and animus and finding fulfillment within ourselves. This process is deeply transformative. As we integrate the feminine and masculine aspects within us, we become more whole. We stop searching for someone to complete us and start becoming complete within ourselves. This is the essence of individuation, the journey toward self-realization, where we embrace and integrate all parts of ourselves, including our sexual energy, desires, and unconscious projections. In relationships, this integration leads to a deeper form of intimacy. No longer driven by projections and fantasies, we can approach love and connection from a place of authenticity. Relationships become spaces for mutual growth, where both partners are free to express their true selves without fear of judgment or rejection. Instead of relying on each other to meet our unmet needs, we can share our energy and love as equals, supporting each other in our personal journeys of growth and self-discovery. The next section will delve deeper into the concept of unconscious sexual energy and how it can be a force for personal and spiritual transformation when brought into awareness. We will explore the challenges and rewards of confronting our shadow desires, integrating them into our consciousness, and using them to fuel the journey toward wholeness. Jung's exploration of sexual energy takes us beyond the realm of personal desire or even relationship dynamics. He believed that sexual energy, when fully understood and integrated, is a pathway to spiritual awakening, not in the traditional sense of transcending the body or denying its urges, but in embracing the body's energy as a sacred force that can guide us to deeper self-awareness and connection with the divine. For Jung, sexual energy was not merely an instinctual force, it was a symbolic power, one that can unlock not only our personal potential, but our spiritual potential as well. This connection between sexual energy and spiritual awakening is not new. Throughout history, various spiritual traditions have recognized the power of sexual energy and sought to integrate it into the spiritual journey. The Kundalini in Hinduism and Tantric traditions, for example, is a coiled energy at the base of the spine, often described as a serpent that, when awakened, rises to unite the body and spirit. The idea is that sexual energy, when consciously cultivated, can lead to enlightenment, just as Jung's individuation process uses this energy to help us become whole. This is a profound shift in understanding. In modern society, sexual energy is often relegated to the realm of the physical, the impulsive, or even the profane. We are taught to either repress it or indulge it without awareness. Jung, however, recognized that sexual energy, when honored and directed, could become a powerful tool for self-realization and spiritual transcendence. Rather than seeing it as something that needs to be controlled or diminished, Jung invited us to embrace this energy as part of the divine forces within us. The goal, according to Jung, is not to reject or suppress our sexual nature, but to integrate it into our spiritual path. This means moving beyond the dualistic thinking of body versus spirit, embracing the idea that the body's energy, sexual energy, is not separate from the spiritual journey. In fact, it is deeply connected to it. As we become more conscious of our sexual energy, we begin to transform it. This transformation, Jung believed, is what leads us to the highest form of individuation when we align our physical, emotional, and spiritual selves. This is not an easy process. It requires us to face not only our desires, but also the shadows they bring with them. It requires us to confront the parts of ourselves we have denied or repressed, and to channel that energy in a way that is life-affirming rather than destructive. Jung's view on the sacredness of sexual energy also echoes through many spiritual traditions. In Christianity, the union of the masculine and feminine energies within the self is a metaphor for achieving spiritual unity with the divine. In Taoism, sexual energy is seen as a vital force for life and spiritual growth, similar to how Jung understood the transformative power of the libido. Whether through alchemy, Kabbalah, or various mystical traditions, sexual energy has been seen as the bridge between the material and spiritual realms. This idea challenges much of what we are taught in modern society, where the body is often seen as something to control or transcend. Instead, Jung invites us to embrace our sexual energy as part of our spiritual journey, and energy that, when integrated, can lead to greater wholeness, creativity, and purpose. By embracing and integrating sexual energy, we begin to recognize that it is a force that can connect us not only to others, but to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the divine. Sexual energy, when fully integrated, becomes a source of vitality, creativity, and spiritual enlightenment, leading us to a deeper, more authentic relationship with the world around us. In the next part, we will explore the dangers of misusing or repressing sexual energy, and how these unexamined energies can manifest in self-destructive patterns, addictions, and projections. Understanding and integrating sexual energy is not only about self-empowerment, but about navigating these powerful forces with awareness and responsibility. When sexual energy is used consciously, it can be a doorway to profound personal and spiritual transformation. When misused or denied, it becomes a shadow force that drives us toward chaos and fragmentation. While the conscious integration of sexual energy can lead to profound personal and spiritual transformation, Jung also warned of the dangers that arise when this energy is repressed, ignored, or misused. Sexual energy is one of the most powerful forces within the human psyche, and when it is denied or distorted, it can wreak havoc on our mental, emotional, and spiritual lives. Repression is one of the most common ways in which sexual energy is mishandled. When we repress sexual desires either out of guilt, shame, or fear, we push them into the unconscious, where they do not disappear but grow stronger. Repression is a form of denial. It's a refusal to acknowledge the natural, instinctual parts of ourselves, leading to an internal conflict that drains our energy and vitality. Jung believed that these repressed energies do not vanish. Instead, they fester and take on a life of their own, influencing our behavior and relationships in unconscious ways. For example, repressed sexual energy can manifest as anxiety, emotional numbness, or compulsive behavior. It can also lead to destructive relationship patterns, where individuals are drawn to unhealthy, unsatisfying connections, often because they are unconsciously seeking to fulfill unmet desires. This repression doesn't just affect our sexual lives, it can permeate all aspects of our existence, undermining our sense of wholeness and purpose. But the problem is not the energy itself, it's the way we respond to it. If we repress sexual energy, we are refusing to confront and integrate it. Instead of harnessing its transformative power, we allow it to control us from the shadows, manifesting as frustration, resentment, or emotional dysfunction. Jung warned that this is one of the most dangerous outcomes of sexual repression. The energy becomes toxic, and its unconscious expression can lead to fragmentation and psychological disintegration. On the opposite end of the spectrum, sexual energy can also be misused when it is indulged in mindlessly, without awareness or self-control. In this case, rather than being suppressed, the energy is allowed to run wild, often through compulsive behaviors, addiction, or obsessive sexual pursuits. While this may seem like an expression of freedom, it is, in fact, a sign of the energy's lack of direction. Without conscious guidance, sexual energy can lead to chaos and destruction. Jung believed that this unexamined indulgence in sexual energy could lead to a loss of personal power. People who surrender to their impulses without reflection or integration are ruled by their desires, unable to see beyond the surface pleasures they seek. This kind of indulgence may temporarily alleviate the feeling of craving, but it ultimately leaves the individual unfulfilled and disconnected from their deeper self. It becomes an endless cycle of seeking gratification, only to find that it does not lead to lasting satisfaction or meaning. So, the real challenge is to find balance. Jung's approach to sexual energy was not about repression or indulgence, but about conscious integration. The key to mastering sexual energy is to recognize it, understand it, and learn to direct it in ways that serve our higher purpose. This requires awareness, discipline, and the willingness to face uncomfortable truths about our desires and fears. When sexual energy is integrated consciously, it becomes a powerful source of creativity, vitality, and spiritual growth. When left unchecked or repressed, it becomes a force of destruction that undermines our sense of wholeness and well-being. Jung saw the process of individuation as the path to integrating all parts of ourselves, including our sexual energy. It is through this integration that we can transform the raw primal aspects of our nature into something refined and life-affirming. The process is not easy. It requires us to confront our shadows, face the uncomfortable parts of ourselves, and direct our energy toward meaningful creation. But by doing so, we reclaim our power, become more conscious of our desires, and begin to live in alignment with our truest selves. In the next part, we will explore projection, one of the most insidious ways that repressed sexual energy can manifest. Projection occurs when we attribute our unconscious desires or traits to others, often distorting our perceptions and relationships. Understanding projection is key to recognizing how our unexamined sexual energy shapes our lives and how we can free ourselves from these patterns to move toward deeper, more authentic connections. One of the most powerful and subtle ways in which sexual energy can manifest unconsciously is through projection. Projection occurs when we attribute our own unconscious desires, traits, or unresolved issues onto others, especially in romantic or sexual contexts. This psychological process distorts reality, making us see others not as they truly are, but as mirrors reflecting parts of ourselves we have either rejected or failed to recognize. Jung believed that projection is one of the most insidious ways that unconscious sexual energy can influence our lives. It's often the root cause of many unhealthy, obsessive relationships, where we become intensely attracted to someone, not because of who they are, but because they represent something we long for or have yet to integrate within ourselves. For example, if we have repressed or ignored our own strength or assertiveness qualities associated with the animus, the inner masculine, we might find ourselves idealizing someone who embodies these traits. The person may appear to us as the ideal partner, someone who fulfills all our needs and desires. In truth, we are simply projecting our unacknowledged animus onto them, and the attraction we feel is actually an unconscious longing to integrate these qualities into our own lives. This projection creates an illusion of perfection in the person we are attracted to. We may feel that they are the answer to all our problems, the missing piece that will complete us. But this idealization is built on an illusion. In reality, no one can live up to the projection we place on them. When we finally realize that they are not as perfect as we imagined, we may feel disappointment, frustration, or even resentment. This is the moment when the projection begins to shatter, and we face the truth that we were never in love with the person themselves, but with an idealized image of what they represented inside us. The problem with projection is that it keeps us trapped in a cycle of seeking external validation and fulfillment, rather than turning inward to embrace the qualities we have disowned. We continue to chase after an ideal partner, thinking they will complete us, while the real work lies in integrating the qualities we admire in others into our own psyche. Jung believed that this is one of the most profound lessons in relationships. What we seek in others is often what we need to find within ourselves. Understanding and recognizing projection is the key to breaking free from this cycle. By becoming conscious of what we are projecting onto others, we can begin to take back our own power. Instead of searching for someone to fulfill our unconscious desires, we start to embrace and integrate those desires ourselves. This doesn't mean that we will stop seeking relationships, but it does mean that we will approach them from a place of wholeness, no longer relying on others to complete us, but coming together with others to grow and share. Jung's work on projection also applies to our sexual energy. Often, our sexual attractions are projections of unconscious desires or aspects of the anima or animus. For example, if we are attracted to someone who embodies traits that we have suppressed or rejected, our attraction is not to the person but to the inner qualities they represent. These projections distort our perceptions and prevent us from experiencing real intimacy. We don't see the other person for who they truly are. We see them as a projection of our own unacknowledged needs and desires. By recognizing projection, we begin to move toward conscious sexual and emotional relationships. We stop expecting others to fulfill our unspoken needs and start looking inward, reclaiming the parts of ourselves we have disowned. In this way, sexual energy becomes a source of empowerment rather than dependency. It becomes a force that can help us build more authentic relationships, grounded in mutual understanding and growth. The process of integrating our projections and sexual energy is one of the central aspects of individuation. It is only when we stop projecting our desires onto others that we can begin to understand ourselves more fully. The journey toward wholeness is not about seeking completion in others, but about becoming complete within ourselves. Only then can we experience true intimacy and connection, both with ourselves and with others. In the next section, we will explore how conscious sexual energy leads to self-empowerment, and how integrating these energies enables us to live authentically, create meaning, and build a life rooted in purpose. We'll discuss how bringing our desires into consciousness can release us from the grip of unconscious urges and allow us to live with clarity and intention. When we begin to integrate our sexual energy consciously, we tap into an immense well of power that can fuel creativity, purpose, and self-empowerment. The key is in the shift from unconscious desire to conscious creation. When sexual energy is left unchecked, it often manifests as simple, impulsive desire. We act on our urges without reflection, seeking temporary satisfaction but ultimately feeling unfulfilled. However, when we bring this energy into consciousness, we transform it into something much more meaningful. Jung believed that sexual energy, at its highest expression, is the creative force behind all human endeavors. It drives us not only toward physical satisfaction, but toward self-expression and creative achievement. Whether it's in the form of art, music, literature, or business, sexual energy is the fuel behind our deepest passions and our greatest creations. This energy, when consciously channeled, can inspire us to produce works that resonate with meaning, that transcend the material world, and touch the deeper aspects of the human spirit. To transition from desire to conscious creation, we must first become aware of our sexual energy. This means no longer denying or repressing it, but embracing it as part of our full, authentic self. The process requires us to sit with our desires, observe them without judgment, and reflect on what they truly mean. Are our desires rooted in a longing for connection, creativity, or spiritual fulfillment? Or are they simply reactions to unconscious impulses and projections? Once we understand the deeper source of our desires, we can begin to channel them in ways that serve our higher purpose. This is where sublimation, transmuting raw sexual energy into higher forms of expression, becomes essential. Jung saw sublimation as the process of taking energy that could be destructive or compulsive and transforming it into something that enriches our lives and the world around us. Whether it's through creating art, building a business, or forming deep, meaningful relationships, conscious sexual energy can be harnessed to fuel the pursuit of purpose and creativity. When we consciously channel this energy, it becomes a source of vitality, empowerment, and spiritual growth. Sexual energy, once understood and directed, can help us build lives that are not only more fulfilling, but also more aligned with our truest desires and deepest potential. We begin to move away from unconscious reactions to desires and start using this powerful force to create meaning and purpose in our lives. As we consciously create, we find that we no longer need to chase after fleeting pleasures or external validation. We no longer need to project our desires onto others or rely on them to complete us. Instead, we begin to create from within, drawing on our own inner resources, our own sexual energy, to manifest our dreams and aspirations. This leads to a deeper sense of wholeness and self-sufficiency, as we no longer look outside ourselves for fulfillment, but create it from within. This is not to say that relationships, physical intimacy, or love are not important. Quite the opposite. But when we channel our sexual energy consciously, we approach relationships from a place of wholeness, not neediness. We no longer seek to be completed by another person. We come together with others to create, grow, and share in the joy of mutual transformation. By integrating sexual energy and using it consciously, we unlock the potential to transform our lives, to become more authentic, and to live with intention. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole, where we no longer live fragmented, unconscious lives, but fully embrace all aspects of ourselves, including our desires and impulses, to create lives filled with meaning and purpose. In the next section, we will explore the spiritual dangers of unexamined sexual energy, how they manifest as projections, addictions, and self-sabotage, and how to reclaim this energy for personal growth. We'll look at how conscious sexual energy can empower us to transcend self-destructive patterns and align ourselves with a deeper, more conscious path. At the heart of Jung's work lies a profound truth that transcends the personal and psychological realms. Sexual energy is sacred. It is not merely an instinctual drive or a biological function. Rather, when understood and integrated, it becomes a spiritual force, a gateway to higher consciousness, to the divine, and to a deeper union with the self. Jung believed that sexual energy, when fully embraced, could lead to spiritual transcendence. But this is not transcendence in the traditional sense of renouncing the body or its desires. It is about transcending our limited, ego-driven understanding of these desires and recognizing them as powerful forces capable of guiding us toward a more profound understanding of who we are and why we are here. In this sense, sexual energy is not separate from our spiritual journey, it is intricately tied to it. Throughout history, many spiritual traditions have recognized the sacredness of sexual energy. In Hinduism, Tantra speaks of the Kundalini, the coiled energy at the base of the spine that, when awakened, rises through the chakras uniting body and spirit. Similarly, in Taoism, sexual energy is revered as a life force that nurtures the spirit and promotes balance within the body. In these traditions, sexual energy is not something to be feared, repressed, or denied, but something to be celebrated, cultivated, and used to awaken the soul. Jung's approach to sexual energy mirrors these ancient teachings. He understood that this energy could either be chaotic and destructive if ignored or misused, or it could be transformative when properly integrated. Jung's insight was that sexual energy is the force of life itself. It is the very essence of our being, fueled by creativity, passion, and the drive to become whole. When we deny it or repress it, we block access to a profound spiritual source. But when we embrace it, when we confront it with awareness, honesty, and respect, we unlock its deepest potential, both for personal growth and for spiritual awakening. This sacred energy is not only about sexual pleasure or reproduction, it is about creation in the most expansive sense. It is the energy behind every act of artistic expression, every scientific breakthrough, every loving connection. It fuels our capacity for creativity and transformation, propelling us toward higher levels of self-realization and spiritual unity. In this way, sexual energy is deeply spiritual, even mystical. It is the energy of life itself, capable of guiding us toward a deeper understanding of our purpose and connection with the world. Jung believed that, when used consciously, sexual energy could help us transcend the limitations of the ego, the false, constructed self that society and culture impose on us. By embracing this energy and integrating it with our psyche, we move beyond the surface-level desires of the ego and reconnect with our higher self, our true essence. This is the path to wholeness, where the fragmented parts of our being are brought together in harmony. Sexual energy, properly integrated, leads us to a deeper union with the divine, whether we view it as the divine within ourselves or as the universe at large. But, as Jung also warned, sexual energy can be dangerous when misused or misunderstood. When it is allowed to run wild, unchecked, it can lead to ego inflation, illusion, and spiritual bypassing. People can become intoxicated by their sexual power, believing that they are enlightened or spiritually advanced, when in fact, they are merely operating from a place of egoic desire. This is why Jung emphasized the importance of integration, the conscious work of bringing this energy into balance, rather than allowing it to overwhelm or dominate us. The final stage of this spiritual awakening involves the union of the masculine and feminine energies within Usta, anima, and animus. Jung referred to this as the sacred marriage, or the conjunktio, the mystical union of opposites. In the alchemical tradition, this was seen as the sacred marriage between the soul and the divine, the merging of the material and spiritual realms. In the same way, the integration of sexual energy becomes a means to achieve this union, both within ourselves and with the greater universe. When we achieve this balance, we no longer need to chase after external validation, nor do we need to be consumed by our desires. Instead, we become centered, authentic, and whole. Our sexual energy, once a chaotic force, becomes a source of peace, creativity, and spiritual wisdom. We move from seeking pleasure and satisfaction to seeking meaning, connection, and purpose. Jung's vision of sexual energy is not about suppression or indulgence, it is about consciousness and integration. It is about embracing this powerful force as a means to unlock our deepest potential and to experience a profound union with ourselves and the world around us. The next section will explore the final revelation that Jung uncovered about sexual energy, an insight so powerful that it has the potential to change the way we view love, power, creativity, and the very nature of our souls. This final truth reveals why sexual energy, when fully understood and embraced, can become the path to enlightenment and the key to unlocking our highest potential. Jung's exploration of sexual energy brings us to the final and most profound truth. Sexual energy is the doorway to the sacred. Not the sacred in the traditional sense of religious dogma or moral codes, but the sacred in the deeper, universal sense, the divine within us all, the archetypal forces that connect us to the soul of the universe. This truth goes beyond the physical or emotional nature of sexual energy. When understood and integrated, it becomes a spiritual engine that carries us toward wholeness and divine union. Jung believed that within every person resides a longing not just for union with another human, but for union with the self, the true self, beyond the ego, the mask, and the roles we play. This is the ultimate goal of individuation, the journey toward reconciling the fragmented aspects of ourselves and realizing the self in its totality. And sexual energy, at its core, is symbolic of this deeper longing. It represents the desire to merge, to dissolve separation, to return to wholeness. In many ancient traditions, from Hindu Tantra to Gnostic Christianity, Taoist alchemy to Kabbalah, sexual energy has always been seen as an integral part of the spiritual path. It is never separate from the spiritual, but instead, the bridge that connects the material and spiritual worlds. Jung's insight into sexual energy mirrors these ancient teachings. The desire for union, for transcendence, is embedded within our sexual drive. Our yearning for connection, whether it's with another person, the world, or the divine's not just a human instinct. It is a reflection of a deeper, universal truth. But here's where Jung's wisdom diverges from traditional thinking. Sexual energy is not an obstacle on the spiritual path. It is the path itself. When we repress it, we cut ourselves off from a vital source of energy. When we indulge in it mindlessly, we lose sight of its deeper purpose. But when we integrate it consciously, it becomes the fuel for our spiritual ascent, our movement toward the divine, our union with the self. This process of spiritual integration is akin to alchemy, transforming the raw base material of the unconscious into spiritual gold. Jung called this the conjunction, the sacred marriage of opposites, the unification of the masculine and feminine, the light and the dark. It's through the integration of our sexual energy that we can achieve this mystical union, both within ourselves and with the universe. This is the sacred marriage, the union of the individual soul with the divine. When we begin to understand sexual energy in this way, we realize that it holds within it the potential for spiritual awakening. It is the force that can break through the walls of ego, dissolving the separateness we feel between ourselves and the world, ourselves and others, ourselves and the divine. It is not about seeking outside of ourselves for completion, but about recognizing that the divine is already within us, in the deepest parts of our being. Jung's final revelation is profound in its simplicity. Sexual energy is sacred not because it is pure, but because it is true. It is one of the most honest, raw, and real forces in human existence. It is a reflection of our deepest desires, our need to connect, to love, to create, and it is a pathway to the highest form of self-realization. Through the conscious integration of this energy, we come to understand that our desires are not shameful or sinful, but are sacred, and that they can lead us toward self-empowerment, wholeness, and divine union. Jung warned us that sexual energy is dangerous. When misused, it can inflate the ego, create illusions of enlightenment, or lead to obsession and spiritual bypassing. But when it is fully understood and consciously integrated, sexual energy becomes a gateway to enlightenment, to deeper self-awareness, and to a more profound connection with the divine. It becomes a powerful tool in the process of individuation, where we stop living fragmented lives and begin living as whole, integrated beings. This sacred energy, when fully embraced, has the power to heal our wounds, dissolve the barriers that separate us from ourselves and others, and connect us to the universal flow of life. It is the most profound form of transformation, the alchemy of the soul. By recognizing our sexual energy as a force for spiritual awakening, we can move beyond the ego, beyond the fears and projections, and into a space of wholeness and divine unity. As we close this journey through Jung's understanding of sexual energy, consider this final question. What would your life look like if you fully integrated your sexual energy? Not repressed, not addicted, but awakened and transformed. What would you create? Who would you become? And how would you experience your connection to others and the world? By answering this question, you begin the next step of your journey toward integration, toward wholeness, and toward the sacred.